Samberton. One lives in Plymouth and the other lives in Belmont. So
Okay, I'm in Rhode Island actually.
oh, I thought you were up. I thought you were up in the Keene area.
I was president of that chapter because they needed me. And I did do a lot of work up there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I grew up. And then
Yeah, I remember you from Seminar One.
yeah, long time ago.
Mm.
I still have the PowerPoints. All right.
You heard Mike Walsh passed away, huh?
I did. Yeah, I had a conversation with Lori.
Oh, good.
That was very sad. Very sad to hear.
He was, he was such an affable man, and although he could get hot under the collar from one time to another.
No.
Yeah, it was known to have happened.
That's what passion does.
Yes,
that's right.
Absolutely.
Just ask Will Smith.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah. I think I'll go back on mute now.
Thanks for your input. We'll give everybody a chance to catch up with us. Okay, according to my friends at Apple, it is now 12:15, and that's our scheduled start time. So let's get rolling. Welcome, everyone. And the topic today is if it's not one thing, and I think pretty much everyone knows the rest of that line. It's not one thing, it's another. So what am I going to talk about today? We start off with the pandemic. Always a talking point. Currently, global infections are at about 482.1 million as recorded through the World Health Organization. So we've got it has slowed down a little bit, but we've still added 140 million people in the first quarter of this year. The deaths from the virus are up to 6.1 million. And so it increased again. So again, we're looking at first quarter results. That's a whole lot of people still that are being impacted. Now, it was interesting. There was a notice yesterday that the World Health Organization has gone out and they found that of all of the currently active virus cases, they're all of the Omicron or the B.2 variants. The Delta variant and all the other earlier variants have all been eradicated. They've either died off or they've been supplanted by the newer variants. So in the US, you can see the infection rate has continued to go up. We've added almost 20 million more infections year to date. And our deaths have gone up another 130,000. That's slower than it was, but that's still pretty significant. That puts us on track for another 500,000 people to die this year from the virus if things don't change. So we're sitting here and we're looking at it and we're saying, well, I don't know, maybe I'll get vaccinated, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll get the second booster shot, maybe I won't. Everyone has to make his or her own choice. This is one of those places where I decided that I'm going to err on the side of conservative safety. I'll get the shots, I'll get the boosters, I'll wear my mask, I'll continue to use hand sanitizer. I'd like to be around at the end of this. In Mexico, we've gotten some updates, but the Mexican numbers say that things are pretty much leveling off. They've had 1.4 million infections added so far this year, and they've only had 22,000 deaths reported. So those numbers are likely understated, but then I think that all of the numbers globally are probably understated. What we see mainly are the people that have had to go to hospitals and have sought healthcare and then died pretty much in the hospital, and those are getting reported out. But people who didn't get to a hospital or didn't go to a hospital, they ended up dying at home. Those aren't reported, not as COVID-related deaths. So I think that there's a significant number of people who have died that are not included in the numbers. The vaccinations going out, we're up to 11.2 billion vaccinations, and that number keeps growing, and that's good news. I've been working with a lot of people in Eastern Europe, and for example, in the country of Bulgaria, they're only at 9% of the population are vaccinated. In Romania, they're slightly ahead of that at about 12. And so that area of the world hasn't really embraced the vaccinations, but the governments aren't paying for it. You have to pay for it and you have to go and find it on your own. And then you get to some of the other areas of the world, India and some of the Central Asian countries, where the same is true. The government doesn't have a program for that. The government isn't paying for it. So it's expensive and you have to travel to get to a doctor. You have to travel to get vaccinated. If you catch the virus, good luck. And that's sort of the way it's going. Here in the US, we've been up and down a little bit. Currently, we're just starting to see the beginning of an uptick with the B.2 virus. But it's been picking up speed in the major early centers, New York, Pennsylvania, the Northeast. So it looks like it's going to be difficult. We may have another large round. We're headed into summer. People are outdoors. The windows are open. We see that the impact of the virus tends to drop off in the summer months. So it may be that this is just a wave and not a tidal wave, or it's just a swell in the ocean. We'll see. But the trend right now, it's just starting up again. We'll see what happens. The local updates, the B2 variant has been found here in El Paso, so we know that it's here already. Our numbers are quite low. Now they're saying that it's more easily transmitted than Omicron, and Omicron was more easily transmitted than Delta. So it seems to be the ones that are still around are the ones that are, more highly transmissible. And that makes sense from the point of view of who's getting it, who's got it, and which one's going to move forward. But they're saying it's no more harmful. And officially, the CDC has authorized a second booster for older people or people with pre-existing conditions. Now, older, they're saying 65 or older. Pre-existing conditions are pretty loose. If you've had any sort of problems with your immune system, if you're a cancer survivor and you went through chemo, you're considered pre-existing. And so if you've had any immune suppression therapy or that sort of thing, then you probably need to think about getting the second booster if you've already gotten the first booster. If you haven't gotten the first booster, you have to get that. And it should be 6 months between your booster shots. So check your shot card and figure it out. Now, we still don't know how they're going to put this out, whether they're going to go to the Coliseum and have them there. We don't know what's going to happen in Juarez and how they're going to handle it there either. So the how is still up in the air. We know that it's authorized. We know that there is the medication is available, but how it's going to happen in the next week or so, we'll find out. In the rest of the world, Shanghai is closed. For those of you who are expecting product to be shipped out of Shanghai, funny story here, as funny stories go sometimes. The different states within China were all allowed to do their own testing regimens and report their findings back to the central government. And Shanghai has shown very low numbers for a long time, but there were other indicators that Shanghai was not COVID-free. And so finally, the Chinese government decided that they were going to have to do something different. And so they mandated tests for the people in Shanghai. And more than 1 million people tested positive. Oops. They had not been enforcing the testing rules in the Shanghai area. And so the government is cracking down. So they've closed the city for 1 week. Actually, they closed half of the city for 1 week, and then they'll close the other half of the city for another week. But the ports will not be closed. The ports will still be open, but the people working in the ports may or may not be able to go to work, depending on where the closures are, whether they're supposed to be in a closed area, and so on and so forth. So this may change. They're rolling it through, but the Chinese government is working diligently to get the virus back in the box, if you will. They've been having different outbreaks, and it seems like it's sort of a whack-a-mole kind of environment right now. So they had closed Shenzhen a week and a half ago. It's opening back up. So if your product's coming out of Shenzhen, then you may see your product shipped, and this may change as well. As I said at the outset, if it isn't one thing, it's another. And so most of this is up for change. But they're shipping, and this will stay fairly stable. Now, the other thing that we need to keep an eye on if you're buying out of China is what's going to happen politically between the Chinese government, the Russian government, and the US government and the EU. In the terms around the Ukraine and the war there, the US and the EU are very tightly bound into the NATO concept here, and they're not doing any trade with Russia. China is still trading with Russia, and they've talked about their pact between the two countries, and that may come into play, and there may be retaliation from the EU and NATO countries against China if they're found to be transitioning material that Russia is using in their war effort. So if that happens, we may see some changes coming between what's allowed in from China and what's not allowed in, and what we're allowed to get there. So don't relax too far into your chair. This may change. How many of you remember the Ever Given? Raise your hand. Remember this? We had this slide up a year ago. The Ever Given had found its way, excuse me, into the side of the Suez Canal, and it was pretty much a permanent position for it until they managed to dig it out and get all kinds of tugboats and pull on it and push on it and shove it around and finally get it free. And then it sat, as you remember, for long weeks in that lake. And once it was finally released, it went on about its way. It took about 4 months for all of that to transpire. Well, meet the Ever Forward. Now, if you think that the name is familiar, you have Ever Given, Ever Forward. The only thing that changed is the letters in front of Ever. The Ever Forward is now currently at rest in Chesapeake Bay. They were on their way to Baltimore, and they decided that they'd take a shortcut. They left the channel, and they found a sandbank that was only about 22 feet, and they draft about 28 feet. So they're significantly wedged into mud at the bottom of Chesapeake Bay. They have a capacity for 24,000 20-foot containers. So they have somewhere beyond 14,000 containers on board the ship, because a lot of them are 40-footers, and so that takes the place of two. So it's loaded and it drafts at 28 feet of water, and it ran out of the channel, and it's currently aground in 22 feet of water. So what they've been trying to do is, it's been there now for over a week. They're trying to, their initial thing was they tried to dig out around the hull and see if with the rising tide they could float the ship again. And they've tried that twice and it didn't work. They're continuing to dig around it and trying to make it easier to float. There's a high tide, lunar controlled high tide. As the moon moves around, tides go up a little bit and down a little bit, depending on where the moon is in relationship to the water. And so they've got a lunar high tide coming in about a week, and that they're hoping will give them enough water to lift the ship, and they'll be able to, or release it enough so that they can move it out of where it is, get it into deeper water again, and then they can check the hull and make sure everything's okay and send it on its way. If that fails, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to unload the ship where it sits. Now, it has a capacity for 24,000 20-foot containers. We know that many of them are 40 footers, so it would be somewhere around 12,000 40 footers if they were all 40 footers. In order to do this, they would have to bring barges alongside the ship with cranes so that they can lift the containers off the ship and put them on the barges. Now, the barges can't handle too many containers. They've got to be balanced. They can't move around a whole lot. This is not an easy thing to do, but they're going to have to do that at least 12,000 times to get the weight off the ship, so that as you release or take the weight away, the ship will elevate a little bit because it's a little bit lighter, and it will rise. Once it breaks free of the mud, then they'll be able to move it. So that's what they're trying to do at this point. They're hoping that they won't have to unload it, but if they do, it could take up to 2 months to unload it and get it to a point where it will float. So it's a problem. But as I said, if it isn't one thing, yeah. So how are we doing with the other port facilities? The Chesapeake Bay is a large place. I've been from the top to the bottom of it a couple of times, and it's pretty easy to stay in the channel. I'm not sure how they missed that, but at any rate, they did. But it's not blocking any shipping because they're out of the channel, and the other ships have figured out how to stay in the channel. So we have to wonder about the management company that runs these ships. What would it be like to be their insurance carrier? No, I don't want to go there. Okay, so port facilities. In Los Angeles, the wait times per ship is 11 to 26 days, depending on the size of the ships. Now, if they're the big, the Ever Forward is about 1,100 feet long. That's 3 football fields. So that's considered a large ship. So if you're a large ship, you're out at the 24 to 26 day range. If you're a smaller ship, if you're 500, 600 feet long, then you can get in and out much quicker because you're smaller. They can put you at a smaller docking facility. And so they've got more capacity for the smaller ships than they do for the larger ships. So the smaller ships are in and out more quickly. Miami and Baltimore are having wait times up to 24 hours. So I put that in there as a counterpoint. We're talking about 11 to 26 days in LA, and we're talking up to 24 hours in Miami and Baltimore. But in Miami and Baltimore, the issue is with trucking, because getting the material moved away from the docks is keeping moves up to 7 days. So their wait times for dock space is short, but they're still not able to go in and move the ships out as quickly because they don't have the dock space to do that. Trucking is still an issue. If you remember last month, I showed you the slide of all of the trucks in line trying to get empties back. And so you're into that whole thing where you've got to have empties to put on the ship so the ship can sail and go to a destination, taking empty containers with it. And at the same time, you have to have space for the full ones that are being offloaded. So it's a logistics issue. And we're seeing that even in Miami and Baltimore, where they're not having dock congestion, the congestion has just moved one step closer to the delivery side, and it's the trucks that are holding things back. Now, why are the trucks holding things back? Well, because they can't get unloaded from the empty containers quickly enough and get reloaded with the full containers. So they're working. And if you want, there are people out there on the in the Twitter world who are updating this information almost on an hour by hour basis. So you can get the point of use data coming back to you fairly quickly. I made a note here that all of the Russian ports are closed to trade from the West, and the Ukrainian ports are blockaded by Russian ships. Russia has done a complete blockade of the Ukrainian coast on the Black Sea. And so there are no ships in or out. Now, the Black Sea itself has not been bothered. There are ships still going in to Bulgaria and Romania, and they're using the barges that they normally do to put stuff into the Danube and run it up into Central Europe from there. And the ports in Northwestern Europe, they're a little bit better than LA, but they're still running 5 to 8 days of wait time for the ships coming in. So there's still a lot of congestion at the ports around the world. And that's probably not going to change into the summer. So what does that do for us? Well, transportation costs, in case you haven't noticed, gas prices have gone up since the last time we met. And so has diesel. The last price I saw in diesel was like $4.78 or something like that. So transportation costs have been going up, but there's some pressure being brought. There was a company in Atlanta yesterday that quoted they were carrying freight out of Atlanta going to Chicago at $1.05 a mile, and they were running as many trucks as they could get marshaled in. They were trying to get independents to come and work with them because they had a lot of freight that needed to move out of the Atlanta area, and they were getting paid $1.05 a mile. But that's very low. There are a lot of routes out there that are being billed out at $1.65 a mile, and they're carrying a fuel surcharge price. So those prices are up. Fuel prices are up, wages are up, benefits are up. So the transportation costs are still up, and demand for transport is still outpacing supply. So higher prices will continue into the summer. That's driving consumer prices up. There's a feeling at Bloomberg and some of the other opinion areas in finance that this is going to start a slowdown in purchasing, that people will stop going to Walmart and stop going to the other stores, and they'll kick back and sit by the pool for the summer and not spend as much money. That being the case, then the whole economy will start to slow down. We'll see. Like I say, if it's not one thing. So that takes us into this consumer spending. So we're still spending money, but it's slowing. The large ticket items are slowing. Well, we don't really know because it's a question. Is it demand or is it supply? You may remember that there was some talk about these ICs, and that talk has gone away, but the ICs haven't shown up. There are still shortages, but what's happened is many of the auto assembly plants have reduced their schedules, and so we don't see as many units on the lots at the car dealers. And so, yeah, their sales are down, but is it that the demand is down for the cars, or is it that the supply is down and people can't get them? And so it's slowed only because there isn't enough supply. And if you read 3 different articles about it, they will give you three different opinions. It's the demand, it's the supply, it's neither. You can find almost any point of view you want, but right now nobody really knows the answer to that. Grocery prices, in contrast, have been forecasted to rise an additional 5% this year. So inflation is still with us, and we'll see that continuing up. Between food and gas, most of us are looking at what else we can afford. So, we're sitting back and going, what else do I need? What can I wait on? Because maybe this will crest and start down by, early fall. And by then I can still go out and get something for my money. The war is having an impact on El Paso as well, El Paso and Juarez, from the point of view of the refugees. We resettled the refugees from Afghanistan. They came out of Afghanistan, went through Germany, and flew into the US, a number of them came to El Paso, and then got managed into housing here or somewhere else. Many of them decided to stay here. But now some are arriving from Ukraine, and they're coming through Mexico. And they're arriving at the border and they're saying, hey, we want in. And because of the restriction that the CDC had put on allowing immigrants into the country because they might be COVID carrying, we're in a position where the law says, and we have been adamant about this, federal judge ruled and said, we can't even stop the law. So we can't let them in. So here we are partnering with NATO to protect as much as we can and to help Ukraine. And yet, Poland has taken almost 4 million refugees out of Ukraine, and they're trying to find other places to put them, and they come here and we can't let them in. So that's all going to change. That's going to get cleared up. Now, depending on, again, which article you read, it could happen as early as tomorrow, or it may not happen for 3 or 4 weeks. But the thrust of it is the CDC has changed its ruling and says that this is no longer necessary. And so they want that, I think it's called Title 24, they want it retired and put away. And that would then open it up for us to allow people in again. So then, if that happens, then the question shifts to the other thousands of people that are currently in Juarez waiting to come across. The ones from Haiti, the ones from Honduras, others from other countries who have been waiting in Mexico for years. So now there's been a lot of back and forth about this, but at the same time, one of the things that we as a country have finally come to recognize is we're about somewhere around 2 million people in the workforce short of where we need to be. And there's this other thing that's happening. There are more people who look like me, older, and the population rate in the US has been less than 2 for several years now, which means that the young population is shrinking and the old people population, my generation, are continuing to live longer. And so we're starting to run into labor shortages because we don't have young people entering the labor market. You look south and you got thousands of people sitting there waiting to come into the US. All we have to do is open the gates, get them in, get them into a position where they can go to work, and we can settle a couple of different issues. this country was built by immigrants, and we have used immigrant labor since the beginning, and we probably need to get back to that model. Anyway, good news. Governor Grisham of New Mexico has allocated $67 million from the infrastructure money to build a new road from Santa Teresa crossing to Sunland Park. Those of you who haven't had the opportunity, if you come across at Santa Teresa, you can take the new road and shoot out and cross over Doniphan and right into I-10. But if you want to go east a little bit quicker than that, you have to come down over the hill past the high school and out to Sunland Park that way. And now they're going to build a new road, a multi-lane road, so that there will be more access to the Santa Teresa crossing. It'll make it easier for people going to work out there. It'll make it easier for people who are coming across that want to come into El Paso. It'll be quicker and easier to take that new road once it's in place. So that's good news, and something that the area needs. And let me put in a plug right here. On the 13th of April, we will be having our professional development meeting for the month of April, and we're going to have a speaker who's going to talk about everything that's going on in the Santa Teresa area. So I think that's it's pretty exciting. It's good news. Now, compare this. Governor Grisham's decided what she's going to do. I have heard, but I've not seen anything in writing yet, that here in El Paso, they're going to use some of the money from the infrastructure bill to expand I-10 from North Mesa to the New Mexico border. They're going to add lanes, and it's a 4 to 5 year project, pretty much akin to what they did, adding 375 loop and expanding I-10 from downtown to North Texas, to North Mesa. And the other part of the money that the city is hoping they will spend would be to build the park on top of I-10 after they expand I-10 through downtown. I personally, my opinion is, I think it would be better if they bought the rights and created a diversion route that took the truck traffic and took it over Anthony Gap, and so it cut through behind Fort Bliss and up through the Anthony Gap and out onto I-10 and bypass El Paso altogether. Now, the Chamber of Commerce is not in support of my thought process because they think that they'll lose too much trade if everybody finds a way to get around the city. But they've done something like that in Phoenix, and it really hasn't had an impact on the city. So there you go. So how does this impact you and what we're doing as far as staying on track for our business and our lives? What can you do? How can you work with this? Focus on your goals for the year and resist getting sidetracked. Go back and look at what the goals were when you started the year and what your plans were to achieve them. There's been a lot of distraction, a lot of noise. Get back to your goals and figure out how you're going to get your goals and get them secured this year. Monitor your results, maintain your focus on accomplishing the things within your control, and focus on getting your goals. Because if you do that, then you'll have a good year, regardless of what else goes on around you. Because if it isn't one thing, it's another. So our next PDM, Jerry Pacheco from the New Mexico Border Industrial Association, will be our speaker. And I've known Jerry forever. People say I'm older than dirt. Well, Jerry is somewhere above me in the dirt structure. But Jerry's good, and he's got a lot going for him, and he's got a really interesting story. So be on board. we're going to do it online. And we've got a class starting on April 9th. If you're interested in CPIM certification, and we'll be going back to teaching hybrid and in-person classes. So contact Deanna and make your plans. Thank you all. Have a great week and a great month. And I'll see you next month.
Thank you.